Welcome, everybody, to the Big Sky Now podcast. As always, I'm your host, Josh Amick. Our panel looks a little bit different this week. We still have John, Mark, and Fritz, but we are missing Ian this week. Hopefully, he's back with us next week. So, getting right into what happened over the weekend, we all had Eastern Washington beating Drake. We all got that pick wrong. Drake pulled it off, winning 35-32. Fritz, in your opinion, what do you think went wrong with the Eagles in this game?
Aside from the Eagles, the once proud Big Sky Conference program going in the wrong direction, they gave up 393 passing yards to Drake. Luke Bailey, their quarterback, was 28 of 48 for 380. That's usually Eastern's MO, to have a quarterback throw up and down the field on the opposition, but they got the tables turned and lost in overtime to a member of the non-scholarship Pioneer League. So that's about all I can really say about that. That 380 really jumped out at me from the quarterback for Drake.
Yeah, just kind of when we thought Eastern maybe was on the way back, they kind of their defense let them down. Like Fritz said, all those yards they gave up, and their offense was fine. They had a fumble that hurt them, and I mean they should have almost lost it in regulation when the punter dropped the snap. I mean they dropped the snap and gave Drake the ball in their territory, and they were kind of lucky to get into overtime from there. But I think, yeah, like Fritz said, the defense let them down, gave up way too many yards. Eastern still has a good offense, but they got to get that defense figured out.
And I think it's kind of interesting how all the talk coming in that we heard with Ian and you, Mark, was about the run defense, and it's the pass defense now that's kind of letting them down today. And the run defense stood up pretty well. They only allowed 67 yards on the ground through 21 carries for their main back. So, I mean, 3 yards per carry is not terrible for Eastern's rushing defense, but yeah, giving up almost 400 yards through the air is not going to win you games, especially when you get into the tougher parts of their schedule.
Yeah, I agree. Those are a lot of good points made by you guys. So, and another impressive week showing for the Idaho Vandals as they went on the road and snapped the Wyoming Cowboys winning streak. And I just found this out that was the first time Idaho was beat Wyoming in 103 years. How impressed are you by the Vandals to start the season, Mark?
No, that's two great defensive efforts by them. I mean, their defense is carrying them. Their offense is on their second quarterback, and who knows, maybe their third one this week. But their defense with the pass rush and able to put pressure on a couple of FBS quarterbacks and their linebackers and secondary being able to cover. I mean, you're not seeing big gap, big chunk plays against their defense. They're holding the other teams both the short gains, and in some cases, especially against Wyoming, putting a lot of heat on the quarterback. So that defense is just awesome at that level. And now, when they get into the Big Sky, it'll be interesting to see how good they are in that league.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of just jump off that point too with the defenses. Like initially against Oregon, you're going to give up yards to the number 3 team in the nation at that point. It's going to be a thing. But they did a good job of limiting the big plays. And you saw that again this week when they took on Wyoming. I mean, just in general, the defense played much better, holding the Cowboys to under 300 yards. And the biggest thing in my mind, they held them to only 3 points after the first quarter. It was 10-7 Wyoming after the first quarter. They outscored them 10-3 the rest of the way.
I don't think we can go any further without me throwing out a big hand of applause to my man, Keyshawn James Newby, the Idaho Vandal defensive end who had 3 sacks, but via Helena High and Montana Tech. He led the Frontier Conference in sacks 2 years ago. He had 9 for Tech, and he transferred over to Idaho, and he hasn't missed a beat. He's been a really good player and might be your defensive player of the year at this point. If you had to pick it today, I'd pick Keyshawn.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that, Fritz, when we were watching the game here at the office. So very good point bringing that up, the local kid. Speaking of local, we had Montana struggling in that second half, and that's to put it lightly, against North Dakota. With so many key Grizzlies missing time, how worried are you about the Grizzlies going forward, or do you think that was kind of just a bad second half, John?
I mean, anytime you see a team go out there and in 28 minutes they only get 9 offensive plays, you're going to have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about that going forward. The injuries, I definitely think, are playing a part into it, but it's hard to, put sole blame of that on there. Montana just couldn't move the ball, and when they did move the ball, it was a fourth down scramble from Ayat, who was running for his life there. And then after that, they backed up 7 yards and missed a field goal. So even their big play didn't lead to anything else in terms of momentum. So I do have a lot of questions. I also know that coming up this week is on paper, easier matchup against Morehead State. So it'll be nice to see if Bobby Howe can get his team to kind of re-rack and go out and, put up a big victory. But that game against Western Carolina in 2 weeks is going to be an interesting one to see.
Fritz, what went wrong with the Grizz?
Yeah, I kind of started having like little warning bells going off my head in the first half when they had good field position and really kind of started stumbling. They kicked a field goal on a clock drive right at the end of the second half, and all three of us were in the office, and I was asked for a tease for the page A1 for the Daily Interlake, and I typed out Grizz Cats win big, and then I thought, and I just changed it to Cats win big because I just had a funny feeling. Not funny, ha either. And then the second half started, and North Dakota got the ball and just wouldn't give it back. Like John said, 3 possessions, 3 and outs. North Dakota State scored every time they had the ball the second half. And I did the numbers. They ran 45 plays the second half for 243. U of M ran 17 for 34 and got 32 of those yards on that one scramble by Ayat. The thing that sticks out is Ayat is fast and mobile, and he ran pretty effectively the first half. And they didn't have any design runs from the second half. I suppose you have to walk that line, keep your quarterback healthy. But they lost momentum in a hurry. And I think Simon Romfo, the kid from the North Dakota town of 15 people, showed why he's got picked to be the starting quarterback. He was very poised the second half. And I guess my other point is every year it seems like under Bobby Houck they have a clunker. And this is a pretty good clunker. Last year it worked out pretty well for the Grizz. I can't guarantee it. I never make that guarantee, but I think they'll get things right, go in the right direction against Morehead State.
Well, Fritz, that's pretty early for the news side to want to tease from sports. They couldn't wait till the end of that game.
Nope.
Nope. So yeah, good idea not putting yourself on the line with that one. So I obviously, you guys watched that game a lot closer than I did. I was tracking the Idaho game, but it looks like, without Bergen, that's obviously one of the most dynamic players in the league. That doesn't help. Yeah. And I think it looks like they're still kind of trying to find their way offensively, at least with quarterback. They got, they still got some good receivers and a couple good backs and stuff like that. But it seems till they get a little bit better play out of the quarterback position, they are gonna struggle.
Yeah, I agree. That second half was definitely not what I was expecting out of Montana, as I had them picked to win as well. Another game that we were kind of split on throughout the week was Weber State against Portland State. And we also saw NAU put up a major fight against top 25 Arizona, only losing by 12 points. What impressed you most about these games with Weber State and NAU, and what kind of stood out to you, Fritz?
Well, I think the number that's jumped out at me for Weber is they were moving the ball up and down the field and couldn't really get much of a separation. But I think when Richie Munoz scored early in the fourth quarter to put them up, I think 26-10, at that point they had outgained the opponent 202 yards to 11. So they're good. I should have known better to pick against them. They're ranked. They're usually pretty good. So that's another L for my season-long picks. I'm going to be fourth. I got a feeling. But that's what stuck out for Weaver.
Yeah, I saw they ran for 316 yards, and Munoz had a really nice game. 3 sacks on defense for them, 8 tackles for loss. I just thought they were going into a little bit better team than Portland State, maybe a few more bullets than what Portland State had to go against them.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed because I talked up Dante Chachere so much last week on this, and he went out there and had a dud, 10 completions, 10 for 22, just 61 yards passing. So that was a little bit disappointing for me, just personally, because I like to watch him ball out. But getting outgained 535 to 240 is never going to be a good sign. And Weber State, I believe, held them to just 18 yards in the first quarter, so they kind of set that tone right away. scoreboard, it looked close for 3 quarters, and then the Wildcats just kind of took over from there. But when you force 6 3-and-outs, your defense is doing a good job.
Yeah, Weber State really stepped up defensively. Portland State, had that great showing the week before against Wazoo, and so I was really impressed by Weber State. That was a good win for them. Speaking of another good win, Montana State improved to 3-0 with a 41-24 victory over the Maine. Are the Bobcats going to run the table in the regular season, or who do you think is the biggest threat to them right now in the Big Sky Conference?
I think there's a lot of potential landmines. They got to play Idaho. Obviously, they play the Grizz. I have written down that they have to go to Eastern, but if Eastern doesn't get its defense in order, that could get out of hand. But that's still, they got to go to Cheney, and that's not always an easy place to play. You got Sac State, UC Davis, and even Portland State at home could give them a game too. I just think there's a lot of. I don't think it's going to be hard for anybody to run the table, even Idaho in the league. And and the way they use Malott, he's a very dynamic player, but he's also one hit away from them being kind of screwed offensively a little bit.
Yeah, Fritz, I know you follow Montana and Montana State very closely. These two teams are some of the top two in the Big Sky. Do you think if Montana is able to get healthy before they start playing each other, that'll be the biggest threat to Montana State, or do you have another team on your mind?
Well, the game before that, the week before that, Montana State finally goes on the road for a pretty good foe with UC Davis. That one kind of sticks out to me. 2 years ago, Montana State completely handled the Grizz on the road down there. It's kind of been that trend. The home team has won big in the Cat Grizz game. Boy, MSU was impressive. I thought the last thing I watched before I came to the office today was I was watching their game on ESPN Plus, and Tommy Malott got around the corner and he got to about the 6-yard line and he slid. And that I think Vegan liked that. He mentioned that today at the press conference, how he's not as combative. That was Vegan's word, taking on tackles on the outside, and that bodes well. You keep him healthy, you win a lot more games. Other than that, the second play from scrimmage, Scott Tree Humphrey goes 79 yards untouched, pretty much. A couple plays later, there goes Adam Jones. So I think they're good. I think their schedule lines up good. I would not have as much confidence in them beating Idaho on the road. I still think Idaho could get him, but UC Davis is the one that sticks out for me, that road game at the end.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with Fritz on that one with the UC Davis game sticking out. I do think that Idaho game poses a little bit more interest because I believe that's the national TV game for one of the two for the Big Sky. So that's gonna have both sides a little bit fired up under the lights. A bigger audience, players are gonna want to show their skills in that one. I mean, when aren't they? So, but with how Idaho's playing, especially this year, that could be a definite matchup. I expect Montana State to be 6-0 at that point when they get there. Their schedule early on doesn't look very difficult. It's very backloaded, but even though they do have some difficult opponents, they are very favorable with the scheduling, with UC Davis being that only time they really have to go on the road for a test. They get Sac State at home, they get Montana at home, they get Idaho at home. All those games I expect them to have a challenge, but being in Bozeman definitely helps.
Yeah, hopefully with that matchup that you guys kind of have circled with Idaho, hopefully by that time Idaho has a healthy quarterback, whether it's Lane or it's Wagner. So hopefully they'll be ready to go for that matchup. That should be a really good one to look forward to in this season. That's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Big Sky Now. Be sure to tune in on Thursday where we'll go over our next week's picks and some of the key matchups for Saturday's games that stand out to us. From the Daily in the Lake and Hagedorn Sports Network, I've been your host, Josh Amick, and until next time, take care.